Unsolved murder, brutal crime in America, decapitated body, Lake Oconee mystery, Georgia crime, FBI investigation. These are the words that still echo in the quiet streets of Eatonton, Georgia, nearly a decade after a tragedy so chilling it seems ripped from a dark Hollywood thriller. On a calm spring morning in May 2014, Russell Dermond, an 88-year-old retired businessman and longtime resident of the Great Waters subdivision, was found dead in the most horrifying way imaginable, decapitated in the garage of his home. 10 days later, his beloved wife Shirley, 87, was discovered in the murky waters of Lake Oconee, weighed down with concrete blocks. The crime scene, the brutality, and the questions left behind have haunted the community, the family, and investigators ever since. This is the story of Russell and Shirley Dermond, a story that reminds us how even the safest gated communities can conceal unspeakable darkness. Russell and Shirley had been fixtures in their Lake Oconee community for years, living quietly in a 4-bedroom home nestled in a wooded cul-de-sac. They were retired, devoted to family, and respected neighbors. Russell had once owned several Hardee's franchises, a career that had brought him stability and a comfortable life. Shirley, a loving mother and grandmother, spent her days tending to the home and nurturing the couple's grandchildren. Their lives seemed ordinary, even serene, until the morning their world, and ours, was shattered. On May 1, 2014, the Dermonds went about their usual routine, running errands in the nearby town, their neighbors seeing them as they had countless times before. Friends expected them at a Kentucky Derby party 2 days later on May 3, but when the couple did not arrive, concern began to grow. When no one could reach them, and the gates of their subdivision remained silent, the neighbors decided to check on them. What they found was beyond comprehension. Russell's body lay in the garage, decapitated, surrounded by a pool of blood. Shirley was nowhere to be found. The sight alone was enough to freeze the blood of anyone who stumbled upon it, a scene of unimaginable horror that immediately signaled to investigators that this was no ordinary crime. The violence was intentional, targeted, precise. Someone had committed an act so gruesome that it seemed almost impossible to fathom. It wasn't a robbery. Nothing of value had been taken, wallets, phones, and other possessions were left untouched. The couple's home showed no signs of forced entry. Everything pointed to a calculated attack, carried out by someone with knowledge and purpose. 10 days later, Shirley's body was recovered from Lake Oconee, weighed down with 2 30-pound concrete blocks. The autopsy revealed blunt force trauma as the cause of her death, but the exact weapon remained unidentified. Russell's head has never been found, leading investigators to believe it may have been removed deliberately to prevent ballistic testing, as gunshot residue had been discovered on his clothing. The sheer brutality of the crime and the meticulous planning suggested a deep-seated malice, an intentional act of evil that no one could have anticipated in such a quiet, picturesque community. The Dermonds' children were devastated. Their eldest son, Mark, had been tragically killed in an unrelated shooting years prior, leaving the family with layers of grief even before this incomprehensible loss. The remaining children, including Brad Dermond, have spoken openly about the emotional toll of losing their parents in such a horrifying manner, yet the identity of the perpetrator remains a mystery. For over a decade, this case has sat cold, a haunting reminder that evil can strike anywhere, often without warning. Investigators quickly worked to piece together any clues. They examined the crime scene, interviewed neighbors, and reviewed security footage from the subdivision entrance. Unfortunately, a recent thunderstorm had knocked out cameras, eliminating any visual leads. They scoured phone records, cell tower data, and any available evidence, but the trail went cold. Authorities did, however, manage to recover DNA from Russell's clothing, a potential breakthrough in a case that had so far defied resolution. This unknown DNA profile was later sent to private labs in Texas and Utah for analysis, and if it doesn't match anyone in the Cody's database, investigators plan to use advanced genealogical techniques to identify the source. The sheriff of Putnam County, Howard Sills, emphasized repeatedly that this was not a random act of violence. "It screams out for an enemy," he said. "A vicious enemy." The fact that the couple's home was secure, that no valuables were taken, and that the attack was executed with such precision, all point to a crime driven by personal motives, not opportunistic gain. But what could have driven someone to commit such horror against an elderly couple? Who had the knowledge, the means, and the motive to carry out this act? These questions remain unanswered. The story of Russell and Shirley Dermond is more than a tale of unsolved murder, it's a reflection of a reality that many Americans refuse to confront. Violence can strike anywhere, even in communities that seem safest, even against those who have lived long lives without incident. It reminds us that beneath the surface of calm suburban streets, secrets and darkness can lurk. The Dermonds were not the only victims of such hidden violence in America, yet their story stands out for its sheer brutality, the age of the victims, and the meticulous nature of the crime. As the FBI continues to investigate, the reward for information remains $25,000, a testament to the ongoing urgency to solve this case. Tips can be submitted to the Putnam County Sheriff's Office or the FBI Atlanta Field Office. Every lead is vital. Every detail could be the thread that unravels a mystery that has haunted a family and a community for over a decade. But the Dermond case is also a story about human resilience. Their children, despite being battered by grief, continue to speak publicly, advocating for justice, keeping their parents' memory alive. Brad Dermond said in an interview, "It must have just been a moment of horror, and probably a very long moment of horror, unfortunately. And so, we know that Mom and Dad want us to keep going." Their voices echo the determination of a family unwilling to let darkness win. In reflecting on the Dermond murders, we are reminded of the broader pattern of unsolved crimes across America. From the quiet neighborhoods of Georgia to the bustling streets of Chicago, there are countless families who have endured similar horrors, whose stories are forgotten by mainstream media but remain vivid in the memories of those left behind. Each unsolved case carries the same questions: why did this happen? Who is responsible? And how can we, as a society, ensure that justice is served? It is the human element, the grief, the fear, the unanswered questions, that make stories like the Dermonds so compelling. They force us to confront our vulnerabilities, to acknowledge that safety is often an illusion, and that evil can strike when least expected. And yet, in the face of such darkness, there is also the possibility of hope. Modern DNA techniques, genealogical research, and tireless investigative work offer the chance that one day, the Dermonds' killer will be brought to justice. Until then, their story serves as a chilling reminder, a cautionary tale, and a tribute to the enduring bond of family. Every detail in this case, from the security cameras knocked out by a storm to the painstaking DNA analysis, paints a picture of methodical investigation in pursuit of justice. The murderers may believe they left no trace, but investigators refuse to let the case fade into obscurity. And for viewers like you, sharing and discussing these stories ensures that the victims are not forgotten, that their lives are remembered, and that their families' fight for answers continues to resonate. The Lake Oconee mystery remains unsolved, but the echoes of that horrific morning in May 2014 continue to reverberate. A decapitated body in a quiet garage, a wife lost to the depths of a lake, a family left in despair, and a community shaken to its core. This is not just a crime story, it is a chapter in the ongoing narrative of violent crime in America. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about vulnerability, justice, and the unknown dangers that lurk even in the most idyllic settings. As we recount the events of that fateful day, it is impossible not to feel the weight of loss, the lingering fear, and the profound mystery that surrounds Russell and Shirley Dermond. Their story, though often forgotten in the shadow of more sensational crimes, is a stark illustration of the fragile nature of life and the enduring need for justice. It is also a call to action, for authorities, for communities, and for each of us, to remain vigilant, compassionate, and determined to seek the truth. And while the case remains unsolved, the Dermonds' legacy continues through the memories of their children and grandchildren. Every visit to their home, every discussion of their lives, and every attempt to solve the crime keeps their story alive. The pursuit of justice is ongoing, and with each passing year, advances in forensic technology and renewed public interest bring the possibility of resolution closer. The Dermonds' tragedy, brutal and senseless as it was, is also a story of endurance, of family bonds that cannot be broken, and of the relentless human desire for truth and accountability. It reminds us that behind every headline is a life, a family, and a community forever changed. And as long as we remember these forgotten crimes, as long as we keep telling their stories, we ensure that the victims are not lost to time, that their suffering is acknowledged, and that the pursuit of justice never ceases. In telling this story, we do more than recount a brutal crime in Georgia. We honor Russell and Shirley Dermond, we shine a light on the unresolved mysteries that haunt our country, and we remind ourselves that even in the darkest corners, there are truths waiting to be uncovered, mysteries demanding attention, and lives deserving of remembrance. The Dermond case remains a haunting chapter in America's history of unsolved murders, a stark reminder that evil can strike anyone, anywhere, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, is a pursuit that defines our humanity.